Hello. So great to see you all here tonight. I want to welcome you to In Tune with Quincy Jones. Tonight is such a special event for us, this panel featuring Quincy's key collaborators. As mentioned, my name is Jason King. I'm Dean of the USC Thornton School of Music. I'm also producer of this series, Beyond Category, Quincy Jones. It's our year-long celebration of all things Quincy Jones at the Thornton School. For the uninitiated, I don't know who would be uninitiated in this room, but Quincy Jones is a monumental master of 20th and 21st century American music. A musician, producer, songwriter, composer, arranger, entrepreneur, investor, philanthropist, humanitarian, who works in so many different musical genres, as diverse as classical, jazz, R&B, pop, has amassed more than 79 Grammy nominations, 28 wins, and of course was inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2013. It is our privilege and our responsibility at USC to study such a towering figure in American music and someone who is a quintessential icon of Los Angeles' musical heritage, Quincy Jones. So I'll repeat something that I said at our kickoff event last year, in which we did a screening, last month, in which we did a screening of Duke Ellington, We Love You Madly, the first TV special musical directed by Quincy Jones. And I said at that event something that I really do believe and hold to be true, which is that Los Angeles should one day have a university performing arts center, much like the one that we're in, with an orchestra pit, and a venue with Quincy Jones' name on it. And it's my hope that the Thornton School of Music can be a driver for that dream to be a reality in some way, and so I'll pass a donation box down the aisle, or so. I don't know what we'll do, but we'll figure it out. I really also hope to see you at our next event, November 21st, next event that's part of this series, The Making of Handel's Messiah, A Soulful Celebration, one of the great albums of the 1990s, executive produced by Quincy Jones and produced by the great Mervyn Warren, who is with us tonight. We'll be listening to the album. There'll be a Q&A with Mervyn, and special guests include Claude McKnight from Take Six and Tevin Campbell, who both appear on the album. So you will really want to be there. Okay, on to some thank yous. Tonight's event and this entire series could not have happened without Visions and Voices, USC's Arts and Humanities Presenting Initiative here on campus. They sponsored and made possible tonight's event. Thank you to the entire Visions and Voices team, especially Daria Yudovkovsky. Really appreciate the support. Thank you also to our co-sponsor, the Recording Academy Black Music Collective. Give it up. Happy to also note that Harvey Mason Jr. is in the house tonight, the CEO of the Recording Academy. I don't know where Harvey is. Raise your hand, Harvey, wherever you are. Really appreciate you being here tonight. And I also want to welcome back our American Music Mentorship panelists. Today, we had a number of panelists joining us, executives and creators from the African continent, tonight joining us, visiting us by way of a State Department and Recording Academy initiative. We're really happy to be able to meet with you today, and thank you for coming tonight. I want to thank my staff at the Thornton School of Music, the best staff anyone could work with ever, including but not limited to Jeff, Heather, Phoenix, Michael, Jonathan, Gretchen, Sean, Deanna. The list goes on and on. I can't thank everybody, but I thank you at the bottom of my heart. Also, thank you to our Board of Counselors, Chair Greg Field, who's here somewhere. The legendary Greg there. Hey. All right. Thornton is named after the great philanthropist Flora Thornton. And I also want to note that her granddaughter and great supporter of the school, Jennifer Whelan Thornton, is here. Jennifer, are you here? There you are. Thank you for all your support of the school. We appreciate you. And I want to also mention, we have some royalty in the house tonight. We're joined by two of Quincy Jones' offspring, Martina Jones and QD3, Quincy Jones III. Over here, Martina, Tina, and Quincy, thank you for joining us tonight. Okay, now on to the panel. So the idea of this entire series has been to shine a spotlight on the creative brilliance of Quincy Jones. What that means tonight is shining a spotlight on the way that Quincy used his talent to illuminate the talent of others, particularly in the 70s and 80s and 90s. This incredible 3 decades of prodigious, brilliant output for Quincy Jones, including the release of so many of his own albums and incredible work on the albums and songs of so many others. So tonight we're highlighting a particular aspect of Quincy Jones, which is Quincy Jones as a curator, not just of fantastic music, but also a curator of people and talented people. So tonight's In Tune panel is a window into the very thing that we tell students all the time at the Thornton School of Music. Don't just be creative in a silo, but work with others. Collaborate, because making music is inherently a collaborative activity. So that being true, I thought, well, I should collaborate on the moderating of this panel tonight. So I called on a longtime friend and a brilliant mind, Harry Weinger, to join me as a co-moderator. Harry is a veteran music executive and producer and Grammy-winning vice president of A&R for Universal Music Enterprises, which is the catalog reissue arm of Universal Music Group. Harry has produced and or managed hundreds of releases, including several Quincy Jones reissues. Harry and I worked together at my previous institution, previous job at NYU, and there he taught numerous courses on his own, as well as some now legendary classes that he co-taught with Questlove. So let's bring out Harry Weinger. There he is. It's like The Price is Right. You got to come on down. Come on down. Why don't you come up here with me, Harry? Okay, so we're gonna introduce everybody tonight here and really, give everybody their due in terms of giving them a little bit of bio for you. So first I want to start with the legendary Tom Baylor. Tom is a singer, composer, songwriter, arranger, producer, and author. You probably know him as a composer of Michael Jackson's She's Out of My Life. Don't make me sing it. Don't make me sing it. He's been an executive music producer, vocal choir arranger, and associate producer on so many Quincy Jones projects, including The Wiz, The Color Purple, Live Aid, the inauguration for Clinton Lincoln Memorial Concert, as well as, of course, Michael Jackson's Thriller, Beat It, and the all-time charity single produced by Quincy, We Are the World. He also happens to be a Thornton graduate in trumpet performance and a great contributor to Thornton and to USC over the years. He is a fiercely loyal Trojan. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to introduce Ed Eckstein, somebody I used to work with. He's a legendary entertainment executive. He ran Quincy Jones's entertainment empire from 73 to 84. That's a key period. He was an executive vice president, GM of the production company. And this is a period when Quincy's evolving from a guy you know as a great producer and arranger to a world-renowned producer and entrepreneur. He then moved to Arista Records. He worked with Whitney Houston, among others. Joined Polygram Records, where Ed reestablished Wing Records. He signed Vanessa Williams, Tony, Brian McKnight. He then became president of Mercury Records. This was a groundbreaking moment because he was the very first African American to be a president at a major non-black owned record company. I was there, I watched it happen, it was incredible. So let's bring out Ed.
All right. We're getting everyone situated here. Next up is Jerry Hay. So, yeah, with 6 Grammys, 15 nominations, Jerry Hay is a towering instrumentalist, arranger, and orchestrator. He's one of the founding members of the legendary Sea Wind. The Sea Wind horn section is played on almost all of Quincy Jones's productions. Think about the sound of that brass on songs like Don't Stop Till You Get Enough or working day and night from Off the Wall. And Seawind and Jerry Hay have graced such a huge range of artists' work, from Barbra Streisand to John Legend to Donna Summer, Bette Midler, Elton John, Earth, Wind and Fire. We would be here till 1 a.m. if I read the entire list. It's unbelievable. Let's welcome Jerry Hay.
Next up, Mervyn Warren, original member of Take Six, but of course, so much more. He's a composer, producer, arranger, pianist, vocalist. He's contributed to more than a dozen tracks on Quincy's last 3 albums, Soul Bossa Nostra, Q's Juke Joint, Back on the Block. He also co-produced with Quincy We Are the World 25 for Haiti. He's also written, arranged, produced songs for numerous films, particularly Sister Act 2 and the multi-platinum soundtrack for The Preacher's Wife, featuring Whitney Houston. He's got 5 Grammys, one in particular for the work that we talked about earlier, The Extraordinary Handel's Messiah, A Soulful Celebration. Give it up for Mervyn Warren.
Is anybody counting the Grammys yet? Because it's like a lot of Grammys on this stage. We're like half done. Okay. yeah, including Quincy's. Saida Garrett is next. Saida Garrett is a Grammy Award-winning singer, songwriter, actor, podcaster, and philanthropist. You will remember her first hit, the now classic duet with Dennis Edwards, Don't Look Any Further. With Quincy producing for Michael Jackson, she co-wrote Man in the Mirror and recorded as his duet partner for the #1 smash, I Just Can't Stop Loving You, from Bad. Saida also appears on Quincy's Back on the Block. She toured with Michael Jackson as a featured and background vocalist on his Dangerous World Tour, and internationally with Madonna and Sergio Mendes, among others. Saida has 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Song, Love You I Do from Dreamgirls, and Real in Rio from the animated feature film Rio. That's just a small sampling of her incredible biography. Here is Saida Garrett.
I had to run because they all walked.
Another great singer, Patty Austin. So you know her, but you know she's also Quincy's goddaughter. After she had several albums, she signed to Quest, his Quest label, where she really achieved international fame. She's got bona fides in the jazz world. They're long and well-deserved, including several Grammy nominations and wins for her recordings for Ella and Avant Gershwin, and a slew of releases on GRP. Interestingly enough, I learned she's got a following in the Northern Soul circuit for these R&B singles she cut as a teenager. The pop world fully embraced Patty for her #1 duet with James Ingram, Baby Come to Me, and their follow-up, How Do You Keep the Music Playing, which was Oscar nominated. On Quincy's own albums, Patty is the featured vocalist on Stuff Like That and The Dude, which won Album of the Year, and you can hear her particularly on Razzmatazz and Bet You Wouldn't Hurt Me, which was co-written by Stevie Wonder, by the way. And she's Michael Jackson's duet partner on It's the Falling in Love from Off the Wall. That's just a little sliver of that. Earlier today, she gave a master class on campus, which I heard was fire. Patty Austin.
Oh, the drama.
It's gonna be a fun evening, I'll just say that.
Come on, Patty, get your butt over here. Okay.
Greg Phillinganes is up next. Greg Phillinganes is a Grammy-nominated and Emmy-winning keyboard artist and musical director, truly one of the most sought after in the world. He began his career in 1975 with Stevie Wonder as part of his band Wonderlove. He's worked with everyone from Eric Clapton, Burt Bacharach, Dionne Warwick, Barbra Streisand, Rod Stewart, Neil Diamond, Herbie Hancock, Mick Jagger, Babyface. I mean, I can't keep going. The list goes on forever. Greg arranged the Jacksons' 1978 album Destiny and played keyboard on their follow-up Triumph. And that's Greg that you hear on Off the Wall, on Thriller, on Bad. He was the musical director for Michael Jackson's Bad and Dangerous concert tours, the Michael Jackson 30th anniversary special. And again, that's like 1/30th of Greg's truly impressive CV and his lifetime of work, also with Quincy Jones. Greg Phillinganes.
Right, okay, so. You know, it's comfortable over here.
This is what happens.
You know, Patty's not going to be able to stand for 5 minutes. You know that, right?
I know. There's a lot back here. A lot back here, baby. Okay, sorry.
Anyway, so there is a guy who keeps tempo here. That's John J.R. Robinson.
Yeah.
He's one of the most prolific and sought-after drummers. Rolling Stone magazine has him on their top list of top 100 drummers of all time. One thing you can do if you're not sure, go back and listen to the intro of Rock With You, which I can't actually sing, but instantly iconic, that's JR. He's played on an estimated 30 number one records. We lost count. He's been a part of more than 10,000 sessions, albums, movies, TV soundtracks. He's played with Rufus, Chaka Khan, Ray Charles, Lady Gaga, Peter Frampton, George Benson, Stevie Wonder, many, 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 many more. He's got a new book out, his memoir, King of the Groove. Here he is, John J.R. Robinson.
And last but surely not least, Paul Jackson Jr. Paul is an incredible guitarist, has been featured on recordings with top superstars like Whitney Houston, Elton John, Luther Vandross, Barbra Streisand, childhood friend Patrice Rushen. He's also recorded with some of today's biggest stars, including The Weeknd, Zendaya, Daft Punk. He is, of course, the guitarist on Michael Jackson's Thriller, on Beat It, Dirty Diana, and so many other iconic Quincy Jones productions, and also a songwriter on Random Access Memories by Daft Punk, a guitarist on Get Lucky, and received a Grammy nomination for Best R&B Instrumental Performance for I Came to Play. I also want to say Paul happens to be an assistant professor of practice right here at USC Thornton in our popular music division. Paul Jackson Jr. And this is our panel. Where do we even start? Incredibly impressive. So I think a number of you in the audience, I would imagine, have seen The Greatest Night in Pop, which is the Netflix documentary on the making of We Are the World. Just last month, as I mentioned, we did a screening of the 1973 CBS TV special, Duke Ellington, We Love You Madly, that Quincy Jones was musical director for. And it seemed almost obvious when you watched that special that perhaps some of the roots of, no pun intended, the roots of We Are the World may have come from Quincy's early work in assembling such an incredible array of talent for that early special, and of course all of the work that he did even decades prior to that. So what I want to ask, since we have such an illustrious panel here in this beautiful semicircle, is how do you think Quincy Jones has always been able to bring such incredible, talented people into his orbit?
Casting. Sorry, I didn't realize it was that loud. Casting. You know, he was the ultimate director. You know, he knew everyone's strengths and non-strengths. And the best part about knowing the non-strengths is that he brought things out of you that you didn't even realize you were in you. So he understood who worked best in whatever configuration he set up.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm curious, everyone on this panel, except Ed, was mostly in the studio with Q. And I'm curious about the answer to that question from your perspective of sitting in the office and enacting this casting. How did you see him looking at people and choosing people?
One of the things that Quincy used to always say was he viewed his role as a producer like a movie director. You'd cast certain actors for certain roles. And more often than not, the decisions that he made creatively were based upon that notion. And I think the reason why it was able to happen is because he had great deal of artistic and creative credibility with the artists in the community. So if they knew if they were going to work on a project with him, it was going to be cool.
Well, let me just ask, I think I got to do this. Your first meeting, first time you ever met Quincy, impressions, memories. Let's start actually. Tom, can I start with you?
I fell in love with Quincy Jones' writing when I bought an album in 1959 called Genius Plus Soul Equals Jazz with Ray Charles. And I loved Ray Charles, and I put on the album, and I heard these arrangements. I went, what the hell? Oh my gosh, and I looked it up, and there he was, and I thought, who's Quincy Jones? I honestly didn't, anyway, I'm a kid. So I was sold on him. And then I started following him, got Birth of a Band, and became just a big fan. And then many years later, this was about 1973, so I had gotten into business and done pretty well, and I was doing a lot of singing and arranging, and especially vocal arranging. And I was doing a gig at Western, and we had answering services then. And I was with Arlen's, and so was Quincy, apparently. And if we were working, they wouldn't interrupt. They just give us a little piece of paper, right? Call a service. So I called the service, and they said, Quincy Jones wants to talk with you. I went, whoa, okay, put him on. And Quincy gets on. He says, hey man, I just heard some arrangements you did for Sassy, and I'm getting ready to do a new album. It's different than anything I've done, and I'd like to work with you. I said, well, sir, I would love to work with you. And he said, where are you right now? And I said, I'm at Western, and that was the east side of Hollywood. And he said, well, just drive west. Here's my address. So I headed out and went to his home, and it had a glass front door. And I knocked on the door, and I see him lumbering. We all know Quincy had the coolest walk ever. Ever, just the coolest walk. And there's a runner, and he's looking down at the rug, and he's walking to the front door, and he looks up, and he goes, opens the door, and he says, you're Tommy Baylor? I said, yes, I am. He said, you're not white. And I thought, ooh, I like this. And he said, come on in, man. And you know, when you go to a client's house, the first time you used to go into the living room, you know, and they give you a glass of water or something. He took me right into the hearth, right into the kitchen, where the love is, man. And we got talking. We're talking a few minutes, and he said, man, how did you learn? I said, well, I grew up in a black church. And he said, well, I think your mama gave you an overdose of Nadnola. And I didn't know what that meant. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. He said, that's a cream that black people use to pass us white, and you're passing motherfucker. I knew I was home. And then that's how I met him. And he said, hey, I want you to do some things, and we could get into that later. But that was my first meeting. I just fell in love with him. I felt like he was my brother.
Yeah, Tom.
Wow, that was exciting. Well, my first meeting with Quincy was around 81. When I was in high school, I was, shedding a lot, trying to become a musician, and I do jam sessions with Gerald Albright and Nathan East and different folks and guys at high school. And one of the records that we were trying to emulate was this record that Quincy did called Trying to Find Out. And is when he introduced the Brothers Johnson. So it was Louis, George, Harvey Mason, and Greg, did you play on that? Okay, it's before Greg played on it. And we could barely count it, let alone play it. And I said, man, one of these days, I'm gonna work with Quincy. And then I think Off the Wall came out, and I had been doing some stuff with Michael and things, but didn't get the Off the Wall. Well, that's okay. I said, one of these days I'm gonna work with Quincy. And one day the phone rang, and I think at that time I was still living at home with my parents, and my mom used to take the calls. And she said, you got a call today from Quincy to come work on a James Ingram album. The album was called It's Your Night. And obviously I'm jumping up and down, and I got there super early and got to meet Quincy. And the thing that surprised me was that he knew everything that I had played on, everything that I had done, stylistically, he knew all of that. There was like no surprises. And it's like, I try something, that's good, try something else, try this, try something else, that's good. But it was just amazing how he just steered the ship and allowed not just myself, but everyone in the room to just have creative expression. And, I never forgot that. It's like, wow, this is somebody who knows everything that you do. He studied you. He knows the records that you've played on, the hits and the not so hits. And he allowed you to be you and made you a better you because he kept pulling it out of you and allowed you to try different things until he got what he wanted. And I was just absolutely blown away working on that session.
Yeah, Paul.
Back in the old days, I was from Southwest Iowa, attending a lot of musical camps when I was a young boy, and I got this brochure from my band director, Mr. Bauman, and it said, the Quincy Jones Music Big Band Camp in Rapid City, South Dakota. And in Southwest Iowa, it was about an 8-hour drive. And I go, Dad, man, I want to go to the Quincy Jones camp. I want to go to the Quincy Jones camp. And he looked at me and goes, how far is it? He goes, well, it's in Rapid. He goes, I'm not taking you. And there's no way to get there because I couldn't drive. So I always had it in my heart that one day I would meet this great gentleman. And so cut to 1978, and I joined Rufus and Chaka Khan, moved from Boston to Los Angeles. And our management at the time, Mark Hartley and Larry Fitzgerald, called me up, and Mark called, he goes, John, I have a seat for you at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. And this is in 1978, seeing the orchestra. And Quincy was a patron. And I go, okay, so I drove down by myself, never been downtown LA. And I drove, and I go, where's my seat? And sure enough, I'm sitting right next to Quincy Jones. And I'm thinking, all right, Mark. And so, cut to the chase, we did a Rufus solo record called Numbers. It was a solo record, and I meet Mr. Eckstein there, and through his prowess, and Quincy produced a Master Jam by Rufus and Chaka Khan. We had several hits, and at that point I was asked eventually to become the drummer on Off the Wall. And Quincy liked Berkeley guys, so I kind of fit right in. So my first time was literally kind of set up in a good way. So I'm forever grateful, and I can't really tell you the other stories about Blowfly and Rufus and Chaka and Quincy's record room, but we'll save that for another night. Thank you.
All right, 2 quick parts. Part 1, I was 18, still in Detroit, where I'm originally from. And Quincy had just released what I call his sexy album. The name of the album was You Got It Bad Girl, right? And it was the fold-out cover, right? And he's standing there looking all sexy, like, right? In the black leather outfit, right? And you could not touch him, man. He was hot. So I said, well, I have to go meet this guy. I have to do. So I left school early, and I went downtown. I believe the store was Hudson's, and he was there for a record signing. So I buy the record, I go there, and I stand in line, and then I go up and meet him, and I go, "Hi, Mr. Jones, my name is Quincy." You know, it's 18, you know, really. And he could not have been sweeter. He said, I told him I was a musician, and he said, and this is basically how the conversation went. I said, I'm a musician, and he said, oh yeah, what do you play? I said, keyboards, you know. He says, oh yeah, do you have a Fender Rhodes? Fender Rhodes is the premier electric piano, you know. And I said, no, I don't have one, but I get to use it, you know, one of the band members that I'm with has one. And a little more small talk, and that was it. He signed the record. Unfortunately, I don't still have it, but he could not have been sweeter. That's part 1. I was 18. It was 1974. Now, part 2, I can't tell you the in-between because that's a whole other half an hour. So I'll just give you part 2. Part 2, I moved out here. I can't tell you why because that's a whole other thing. But anyway, I moved out here. It's, I think it was 76. No, I moved out here in 75, but in 76 was part 2 of meeting Quincy, and he called me to do a session, and the first session I ever did with Quincy Jones was something that he co-produced along with Herb Alpert. It was my first time going to A&M Records, and the song was The Best Thing. That was the name of the song, and the vocalist was his dad, Billy Eckstine.
I was 4. So I was 4, and there's this lady named Dinah Washington who proclaimed herself to be my godmother. And I had shown up and showed out at the Apollo Theater where Dinah was working. I used to go, not alone at 4, I'd go with my parents. Every weekend we would go to Harlem, go to Abyssinian Baptist Church in the morning, have a picnic lunch on a big rock in Central Park that we called Our Rock, and then we would go to the Apollo and see one of the 6 shows that they used to do a day at the Apollo. And Dinah, again, long story made much shorter, Dinah dared me to go out on stage and sing, and I did, and she loved it, at which point she proclaimed herself to be my godmother. And she said, I have somebody I want to have hear you sing because we need to do a show together at the Apollo. And in those days, Dinah was known as the Queen of the Blues. And so the show was going to be Dinah Washington, the Queen of the Blues, and Patty Austin, the Princess. And so she said... she's been a princess ever since. So we went to see this guy who was an up-and-coming trumpet player / arranger who was doing arrangements for Dinah. And we went to his little basement apartment. I guess he was in his early 20s. And he had an adorable baby in a high chair in the hallway. And very young, beautiful wife, young, lovely couple. And went there with my parents and Dinah. And Dinah said, sing for him. And I sang, and it was Quincy. And I sang for him, and he said, he went over to Dinah and he said, "So she's a midget, right?" And for many years, he called me the midget. And he played some notes, and I sang them back, and he said, "Man, has she got ears." And his wife happened to be passing the room at the time. I found this out many years later, that that Jerry kept saying, she said, "You know, I kept looking at your ears. They looked like everybody else's ears." I didn't know what that meant. Quincy has always had his own language. And very often I have been put in a position to interpret his language. So when he said I had ears, he meant that I could hear sound, I could hear notes, I could duplicate them if I heard them one time. Notice I said could. I can't anymore. Okay, so I still got it, kid. And I'm trying to get rid of it. But, so that's how we met, in his basement, singing, him calling me a midget. And the show never came to fruition, but Dinah hooked me up with a wonderful manager, and he was a producer of a local TV show in New York called Star Time. And I was on that show with Connie Francis, who played accordion to hide her baby fat, and Bernadette Peters, and Bobby Darin, and me. And our announcer was Johnny Olson. Johnny Olson was the announcer, and our the advertisers for the show was Hebrew National Salami. There you go. They answer to a higher authority. So that's how I got started in show business, and that's how I got to meet my godfather. And Dinah proclaimed, "This is my goddaughter," and Quincy said, "Well, if she's your goddaughter, now she's my goddaughter too." So that's how I ended up with two of the baddest mamma jammers in show business. Yeah. And just to cap that off, many times Quincy and I will sit at stuff together and look at each other and go, "God, have we known each other forever?" And how many people have we seen, come and go in this lifetime? Because we've literally grown up together. He was a child. Nobody knew who he was except Dinah at that point. But he was just when he was making his mark in the business. So it's been an incredible journey to be in his presence for that whole time. And you see the masterful people sitting up here. It comes from his incredible sense of taste and his incredible sick sense of humor. Because you don't get to spend a lot of time with him unless there's going to be some laughter. You really don't. Laughter and food, there you go. And when, I always say, and you are looking at the two other people. The rest of my friends here are kind. The rest of my friends are kind and gentle and quiet people. Cy and Greg and I are little monsters.
The bad kids in the back of the class.
The bad kids, and Quincy always calls, particularly Greg and I. Saida knows how to calm down in a work situation. But he calls us the budget busters.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of fun when we work together. We do 2 hours of laughing and 1 hour of music. And the music always has all of that joy and energy in it, always. And Quincy makes sure that that's always there. It's right? Yeah, it's on the records. It's on the records. And I'm done for the night. Hit it, Mama.
Greg was 18, Patty was 4. I was 24, darling. I got a call one night from the boyfriend of the girl that I used to sing with. He told me that Nadira is gonna meet Quincy Jones because he's looking for a group to put together, and she's gonna audition tomorrow at Sunset Studios. Sunset Sound or something. Sunset Sound. And I said, okay, what time? He said, I don't know. So I showed up at 7:30 in the morning. And it was me and 3 other people in line, but by the time the actual auditions began at 12 o'clock, the line was all the way around the block. So I walked in, and there were 5 tables, and at each table there were 5 clipboards with the 5 days of the week and 15-minute intervals. You go in, you sign the time and the date that you want to audition, and I said, I'm here now. I'm ready now, so I just did my audition now. So Quincy told me, at those auditions was this man at the end, Mr. Tom Baylor. And there must have been about 10 or 8 or 10 different callbacks, but the first time I was in the room with Quincy Jones, I think I was auditioning, and the piano player forgot she was transposing. So in the middle of the song, she switched keys. I ignored her ass. And continued my audition. Tom Baylor told me years later that he thought that that was very professional of me. I just thought it was hood. I just knew. So I auditioned for Quincy Jones, and I would get these letters. He was looking for a group like Manhattan Transfer, and Take 6 hadn't been discovered yet, or he hadn't known that they existed yet. But he wanted a vocal group, so he auditioned 800 people. I already told you I was 3rd, so 800 people, and he told me that, and Tom told me that there was a bar that I set, and everyone who auditioned after me had to be as good as I was or better than I was. So I would get these letters. The first letter was, congratulations, you're one of 500 people that have done Quincy Jones's group. And I'm like, I'm still in the running. A month or 2 later, 250 people. Congratulations, you're still in the running. Few months, went on for 9 months. That's right, 9 months we'd get these letters. And it was like 500, 250, 100, 50, 25, 15, 10, 5, 4. Me and 3 dudes. We were a group called Deco. We had one album that was the soundtrack to Sidney Poitier's directorial debut, a film called Fast Forward. And that's exactly what it did. It fast forwarded out of the theaters. But I had recorded this song with Jelly Bean Benitez, and that song was in the film. It's called Do You Want It Right Now? And it plays in the film, and I was so excited to hear it play in the guitar solo. But it did go on to become a #1 dance record, and it's still played in the clubs today, which I'm proud of. So while Quincy was still deciding, I was in my house in the driveway, washing my car with the radio on, and I hear the DJ say, hey, we're here with Sergio Mendes, 1580 Katie. If you want to call 555-1580 and talk to Sergio Mendes. And I ran in the house, and I started dialing.
Those are called rotary phones.
Oh, the rotary phone.
Beep, 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 beep. Ring, ring, ring. 1580 Katie. Oh my God. I didn't know what to say. I said, is Sergio looking for any singers? He said, I don't know. Why don't you ask him? He hands Sergio the phone. So Sergio asked me a couple of questions. Have you ever recorded? Do you have anything I could listen to? Yes and yes. I'd made 2 albums. No, I made 1 album. I had 2 copies. That's what it was. I knew my mama had 1. I knew my grandmama had 1, so I went to my mama's house and I got that record, and I took it to Sergio's house, and his wife opened the door and led me in, and I'm standing there, and Sergio comes cascading down this long staircase with a straw hat and a big fat Cuban cigar and Tommy Bahama shirt, and he took the record, and I followed him into his dining room where the record player was, and he dropped the needle, picked it up, dropped the needle, and a third time he picked it up, dropped the needle. He said, I got a cassette from his wife. I was to learn 3 songs in 5 days. In Portuguese, bitch, in Portuguese. So I learned those songs, and I went to Sergio's house, and I auditioned for Sergio and his keyboard player, a man named John Beasley, very famous jazz musician. And John said, yeah, she's pretty good. So Sergio said, okay. I started touring with Sergio. We would go to Canada. We'd leave on Thursday, come back on Tuesday. We'd go to the Dominican Republic. We had a gig 1 weekend, 1 Saturday night. We stayed for 3 weeks. I thought this was touring. So Sergio really liked my voice, and I recorded some music on a couple of his albums. I sang solo on a couple of his records, and he said, I would like to offer you a solo deal at A&M. And I'm like, great. I go home, I call Quincy Jones. I have never phoned this man's house before, but I said, Mr. Jones, I know I'm still waiting to be in this group. But Sergio Mendes has offered me a solo deal at A&M. And then classic Quincy Jones. He said, that's great. But let me ask you this. When's the last record Sergio had out? Oh. But it wasn't fair, because Sergio had a record out and he was producing, he was on the radio promoting it. But anyway, long story short, 2 days after that, I got my damn contract to be in this group called Deco. Oh, wow. And that is how I was introduced to Quincy Jones.
Wow. Okay. That's a good one.
I'll tell you later about the duet and the Man in the Mirror and all that, but Mervyn? Shut up.
The rule.
Oh my God, I'm loving these stories. This is amazing. As Saida mentioned in passing, I was in a vocal group called Take 6. Thank you. And we signed with Warner Brothers, but we signed with the Nashville division of Warner Brothers, but it was still Warner Brothers. And this was in 1988, I believe. I was fresh out of college, fresh out of grad school, and instead of getting a job, I got a record deal, and it was amazing. And Warner Brothers flew us to LA, probably monthly, to do promotions, and they were really, really promoting us. And introducing us to people. And on one of those trips, in about 1988, they said to us, Quincy Jones wants to meet you guys. And we freaked out. We were all fans, of course. And they popped us in a limo, and they took us to Quincy's house. And we got in there, and at the time, one of my favorite albums of all time, at the time was The Dude, featuring Patty and Greg and everybody else. And you walked into his house, and on the album cover is a statue. There's an African statue on the album cover. You walk into his house, and on his coffee table is that statue. And that just, I don't know, that just blew me away because I had spent so many years, and I'm saying years, I'm forgetting exactly what year that album came out, but a long time reading that album cover, studying it, reading all those names, who played on it, who sang on it. This is, stuff we don't get today. You don't get, liner notes with albums anymore. And because back in those days, we got work that way. People would read these album covers and go, oh, he did that vocal arrangement, or oh, she sang background vocals, and then those people would get more work. But that doesn't happen anymore. Anyhow, I had been studying that, and I saw that, and when just seeing that statue and then seeing Quincy sitting on the sofa was just mind-blowing to me. Because for a kid from Alabama, where no one made a living as a musician, people told me I was wasting my mind by pursuing music. You should be something else instead. And I said, no, I know what I want to do. And then to be sitting in the home of Quincy Jones, where he had invited us, was just almost more than I could stand at the time. But it was fantastic. He was so warm, he was so friendly, engaging, and we talked about all sorts of things. He told us that, of course, being who he is, he received tapes and CDs from all sorts of people. He said that his his office at the time received over 200 tapes or CDs a day from people who wanted record deals, people who wanted this, people who wanted the other. But he said that his office had received about 40 copies of our first album that had been sent to him by his friends or maybe colleagues who said, man, you got to hear this, you got to hear this. And he said after he got about 40 copies of it, he said, well, okay, maybe I better listen to this one. So he listened to it, and he said he was blown away, and that led to him inviting us to meet him. I remember we were there for a short time. He was very laudatory, and just as we were leaving, I very brazenly turned and said to him, I write, I arrange, I produce. Please keep me in mind. And sure enough, that was sort of the beginning. I mean, he did invite us to perform on Back on the Block, which I believe began about a year later. We sang on a number of those songs. I did vocal arrangements, and then later I started doing keyboard arrangements for him or string arrangements, etc. So that was the beginning of what we all here share, which is, decades-long relationship with Quincy, but that's how it started.
Mervyn, I just have to say this to you because a lot of us haven't seen each other for years, and we have what I like to call pieces of stories. The reason that they brought you in to Warner's to meet everybody is because a few nights before all of that happened, and I think you might have been there, we were in the studio with David Pack. And Michael McDonald called us and said, you need to turn on your radio right now. There is a group singing that will blow your mind. So we were in the middle of a session, we stopped. We turned on this radio station and they were playing Take Six. And we were all like, Jesus, who is this? And what label are they on? Who are these guys? All of us got on the phone the next day and called Warner Brothers. We were calling all these record companies. Who are they with you? And somebody at Warner said, oh, they're on Warner's. Well, what are you doing with them? Well, we don't really know what to do because, they sing gospel and it's not like pop. And get them on the Tonight Show, you idiots. That's what you do with them. Turn them into stars. Get them into the office. Let everybody see them so they can create a personal relationship with the people at the record company. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard you all went to the Warner's, to the plantation as we used to call it, and and you went from one desk to the other and gave them like 8 bars of magnificence. And suddenly they were like, oh, we got to figure out what to do with these suckers.
We did sing in the office.
Okay,
We
that's
did.
what I heard. Yes, and people were blown away. And you were slick because you sang for the secretaries, and they're the ones that were doing all the work. Yeah, you know? So, I mean, I feel that I had a tiny, tiny part.
Thank you.
Me, David Pack, and Michael McDonald, just screaming about you guys. It's amazing.
Well, thank you for that so much.
I've never told you that.
Get on the mic, Jerry.
Okay, I am. Well, as you can tell, this group of just amazing people up here, every one of them, led by Patty, of course. Always led by Patty. Saida is running a close second. As Patty said, we haven't seen each other. You know, we go years without seeing each other. We come together for something like this. It's like we're back in the studio again, and back in 1980. This is a 45-year-old thing we got going on here, and it just never stops.
Speak for yourself.
So I first met Quincy. I was a member of Seawind, and we were living in Hawaii, and we had just moved to LA in 1976. And we were playing at a club called the Baked Potato, you know? So we were playing there on, it happened to be Lee Ritenour's off night. He was taking off to go on tour or in the studio or something, so we got to play on Monday or maybe Tuesday night. And we're playing in there for, I don't know, it had been like 3 months, I guess, we were in there. Harvey Mason was a senior, was the drummer in that band, played on, you name it, he played on it. He was our producer, so he got us in to play at the Baked Potato. We were playing at the Baked Potato, and I go home that night. The next day, a phone rings. Jerry, this is Quincy Jones. I have no idea how he got my phone number, first of all. We'd just been in town 3 months, never met him, and he says, I want you to come in and play on a record. When, where, I'm there now, okay. And he said, and I want you to arrange. I said, you want me to arrange the horns on something for you? Okay, I don't know how he, as he did with each one of us, he found out who we were, he knew everything about it, he knew what we could do, and I always say that's the best part of Quincy's Rolodex, is that he calls the right people to do the right job. He calls the right singers, the right engineer, the right songwriters, the right musicians. So he called me in to do this one song on his album called I Heard That. Wasn't much of, we didn't play a lot, but it was my foot in the door with Quincy, and if he has arranging, fortunately I was one of the guys that he called for that, and I thank him for that.
Yeah.
I was 7 years old.
You were.
I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
It was 1961. My father, being the singer Billy Eckstine, was on tour doing his summer tour thing. Thank you. And Quincy was then an A&R man at Mercury Records. And Quincy would sort of cheat and get out of the office by going out on the road with certain people that were near and dear to him, and my dad was one of those people. So for this particular tour that summer, it was Billy Eckstine, the Quincy Jones Orchestra, Nipsey Russell, or Red Fox, depending on how late the show was, the comedian, and the Four Tops were my dad's backup singers. During the summers, my family would we'd pack up in the station wagon, drive cross country, hang out with Pops on tour, Mom, the whole family. And so we were at the Apollo. And unbeknownst to me, between shows, they were doing 5 or 6 shows a day at the Apollo. In between shows, they dropped the movie screen, and folks would watch a movie. I like to get up and sit behind the drums and screw around. Once again, unbeknownst to me, I'm back there playing the drums, and you're out there trying to watch a movie. So all hell breaks loose, and they come and yank me off the drum kit. So Pops every day would play golf. My dad was a degenerate golfer, loved to play golf. And it was kind of boring for me as a 7-year-old kid just to go hang out on the golf course with the old man, as much as I loved being with my dad. My options were to hang with my mom, to go see our aunts or whatever. Or this particular day, Quincy said to me, "Hey man, my family calls me Bugs." He said, "Hey Bugs, why don't you come with me tomorrow? I'm doing a clinic." For those of you who don't know, clinics were when musicians were sponsored by certain instrument companies. They would sort of pay their dues, if you will, by going to music stores and taking on young aspiring musicians, showing them stuff. So he said, "Come on, hang out with me." So I did, and I proceeded to do that pretty much the remainder of the summer, hanging with Q. That was phase 1, to steal from Greg. Phase 2, which ultimately landed me where I am right now, was I was a writer. Journalist, press flack, as it were, and I hadn't seen Quincy in years, and he was about to release his album Body Heat, and I'd received a call from the publicity department at A&M Records asking me would I be interested in hearing a pre-release copy and writing a review of it, and blah 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 blah. So certainly, and I listened to the record. I loved the album. And they said, well, look, he's doing a gig at Disneyland when Disneyland was still doing big band gigs. This is like 1974 at this point. He said, give him a ring and connect with him and you can do the interview. So I called him. Hadn't talked to him since in years. Like I said, I'd been through high school and all that. "Bugs, how you doing, man? What's going on with you?" Proceeded to do all the catch-up stuff. "Come on down to A&M tomorrow and meet me at the band bus at 6 o'clock at A&M, and we're going down to Disneyland to do the gig." So I get to A&M. I'm late, of course. Tall kid, big-ass platform boots on, afro disco. And I'm late, and all these musicians who were on the bus were guys who had been New York musicians who were out here playing either in the studio orchestras or like in the Tonight Show Orchestra, the Merv Griffin Orchestra. A lot of guys who'd been in either Basie, Duke, or Lionel Hampton's bands. So they all knew my old man. And so when I come to get on the bus, the first thing Quincy says is, "Guess who this is?" And you see these old grizzled dudes sitting there like, "All we know is this MF is late. I don't know who he is. He needs to get a goddamn haircut," one of those things. So Quincy says, "This is B's son." And all of a sudden you hear some grumbling in the back, and Snooky Young, the trumpet player, says, "You kidding me?" He said, "Man, boy, I remember when you were no more than a conversation." He said, we were on the road with Basie's band, and B said, "Man, I'm going to go up to the hotel room and get on the big Georgia girl of mine and make me a son." And he goes, "And here you are, late." So proceeded to go down to Disneyland to do the gig and to do the interview. And ultimately Quincy and I sat and talked for 3 hours that night and never did do the interview, just caught up. So he told me, come by the house the next day. He was living in Brentwood on Rockingham, down the street from the OJ house. So we sat out in the back room at the studio at the house and talked for about 7 hours that day. Never did do the interview, just talked about all kinds of shit. Peggy Lipton, who was his wife then, had put food outside the door. Food was sort of stacked up. We didn't eat any of it. We just sat and talked. He said, "Man, come back tomorrow." So I came back the next day, which was Sunday, to rinse and repeat and do it again. And we proceeded to do the exact same thing all over again. But I realized at a certain point that while I was there to interview him, he was actually interviewing me. Because at that particular moment, what he had told me was that he was in the process of making a bunch of changes in his professional career, that he was no longer interested in making records. He was transitioning out of movies and TV and wanted to focus on records. He wanted to find some artists that would be his, that he could produce and develop for the marketplace, Brothers Johnson being the first of which. And he was in partnership at that point with Ray Brown, And Quincy, one of the things that I learned in all those years that I worked with him was not to imply that he's a snake, but because he's not, but for the sake of conversation, he sheds skin every 5 years or so. He makes changes, you know? And those changes were going down at that particular point, and he was interested. He said to me, he said, "You interested in coming to work for me? Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to start this company. What do you want to do?" And I proceeded to tell him, this plan of world domination that I want to do, at, 18 years old. I want to do this, you know? And then he said, no, calm down there, son. He said, no, tell me the one thing you want to do. And I said, I want to produce records. He looks at me and says, we already have somebody here who does that. So he said, I'm sure we can find some other shit for you to do. So that was on a Sunday, and he said, be at the office at A&M tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And I was living in Santa Monica then, and a friend of mine and I had an apartment. I didn't have a car. I was hitchhiking, taking the bus everywhere I could be. And I hitchhiked to A&M. It was at the office at 10 o'clock the next morning. And I proceeded to continue to work for him for 11 years. Started off as sort of a low-level publicist and ended up as, by title, Executive Vice President and General Manager of Quincy Jones Productions. I always said I generally managed to get through every day. That's why I couldn't know all these. There you have it.
Whew. I feel like every moment is a mic drop. I wanted to pivot a little bit. These are, Quincy has success story after success story. And we all are talking about a golden period for him and for yourselves. I'm wondering, where did you see him struggle? Were there moments where you saw him wonder, should I produce Michael Jackson? Do I hire you to do this? Do I have you come in? What am I doing? Am I shedding my skin, really? Every 5 years? Did you see any of that? Did you experience any of that?
I'd like to jump in on a piece of that.
Okay.
I think in line with any kind of creative questions, obviously these people could address it far better than I, but I also think that we'd be remiss if we didn't point out some people who aren't here, who are no longer with us, who are very key to the Quincy gumbo, as it were. Of course, Bruce Swedien, his engineer. Louis Johnson. James Ingram. Rod Temperton.
Yes!
And of course, Michael Jackson.
Thank you.
As far as what the question you actually asked, I don't know.
No, but
I'm nothing.
it's good to
Greg,
call
Got
out.
nothing.
It's good to
Greg,
call
you
out
were
your
going to
name.
say something.
Well, the thought hit me right at the end of that question was that he did suffer tremendous challenges. But what was interesting is I never saw what he went through. I never saw directly what he went through. And I never realized what he was going through at the time. For instance, we were doing, Thriller, I think. And at the same time, he was doing the thing for E.T., for Steven, right? And the pressure of balancing Thriller, the record, while at the same time trying to accommodate Steven for his little movie, to have Michael involved in it, and the pressures from those events and other things, what he was going through personally, that actually drove him to a nervous breakdown. Right? Oh yeah. And he ended up going, but I never knew that at the time. That's what's so crazy. Right. And then, at a certain point, he just disappeared and went to Fiji, right? Remember that? And but I never knew the details though. But he suffered tremendous challenges, when he did the We Are the Future event in Rome at Circus Maximus, I remember that. You remember that? There's so many things I didn't realize was going on. That event almost didn't happen. You know why? Because he ran out of money. People that said they would help fund it
dropped off.
I was there.
And right. And I come to find out later on, Patty, remember after the fact we found out that he had to mortgage
Oh, he
his
mortgaged his house.
home
Yeah, to do that.
to see that through. Never knew any of that.
I unfortunately knew all of it.
You said you were at that meeting.
Yeah, well, I was at the meeting with because if you know Quincy at all, you get to know everybody else that Quincy knows. Right? You don't just know Quincy. If Quincy knows the president, you're eventually going to meet the president. And if Quincy knows the elevator operator, you will eventually get to know him as well, because his range of relationships and friendships are with everybody, everybody, And I happened to be at the meeting with the two guys that were going to invest in this thing that he was going to do in Italy, and it's the three of them and me sitting at a table in Washington, D.C., and them saying, "You're nuts. You're not going to make a dime off of this. It's a bad investment, and we want to talk you out of doing this." I have seen Quincy get bullish many times. This was like a bunch of bulls. He was not hearing it. He said, "I'm doing this, and I don't care what you take away or what you decide you want to give, I'm doing it." And so he did. And it didn't do as well, it was kind of the prediction was a bit spot on, not completely, but a bit spot on. But he was determined to do it. And when he gets determined to do something, it gets done. When he was at A&M, you're talking about the dude, boy, did that bring some memories back. I was staying at the house. I was staying at Quincy's at the time. And he was not having a good time at A&M, and his deal was up, and they wanted him to do another album. And he did not want to do that album. And he went to everybody in the inner circle and said, "Man, I don't want to give them this record. I just don't want to give it to them. I hate it there. I hate A&M. I hate the guy that runs it. I don't want to do another record for them." And then he would go through that, and then he would say, "You think I should do it?" And everybody said, "You must do it." He said, "Well, if I do it, I'm just going to throw it together." And at the same time, "No, you can't do that. You have to nail it. Whenever you make a recording, it's out there for the rest of your life. So you've got to put Quincy into it, and the rest of that is history." He did. He made one of the best albums ever, and it turned out to be a big thing. But he struggled through that. Another thing I want to address, you're talking about, this always fascinated me about Quincy. You'd go into his music room, and there would be cassettes, those are the days of cassettes, and DATs, stacked up like this, with demos, with material, with artists that were trying to. He would listen to everything. Everything. If you handed him a demo, if you were able to hand him a demo at a party, he would listen to it. He would listen to all of the demos. That's how he found James Ingram. Listening to all of the demos. And that's the way he does everything, He got ready to work with Temperton, and they wanted to find out what the common rhythm was on all the pop music at that time. Of course, the only way to do that, if you're Quincy, is to go to all the clubs. And so he and Roddy went to every club, every dance club, and listened to, and sit there and, okay, what's the beat on this? And they found out that there was a commonality in the rhythm. And Quincy brought all of that into all the stuff that he was doing with Michael. Those tempos were scientifically chosen. No, he didn't just say, "Let's do it here, let's do it like here." No. He and Rod had gone and listened to every record, went into every dance club, and found out what the people wanted to hear. So to me, that's one of the biggest parts of his genius. He just immerses himself in everything he's going to do in his entire life. And so he's led a very dramatic, dramatic life as a result. You know, yeah. And if you love him and you're with him on it, you take take some of that pink liquid with you, because it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride. But he always comes up like a champion. Everybody learns something they didn't know before. And it's just amazing to be in his presence in the times you're talking about. But one of the things I think that really took him off the deep end and took him to Tahiti was winning 45 Grammys in about 15 minutes. You know, that kind of success happening after he had been working all those years really blew his mind. Really blew his mind. It was almost too much success to handle at one time. And but he had
The stuff with Michael alone.
the stuff with Michael alone.
Just that.
Yeah, yeah. But all that material, you know, just once, was a demo in a stack of demos that went from the floor literally to here, one at a time. I was with him when he heard James for the first time on the demo. The same, in that stack of demos was a song called Passing Wind. I swear to you. Wow. He said, what do you think of this title, Patty? Passing Wind, what do you think? What do you think this is going to be about? We were on the floor, and it was hilarious. Passing Wind. It was so, and he listened to the whole song. He wouldn't listen to 8 bars and say, no, the whole song.
God bless him.
But
That was the opposite of Rod Temperton. When Rod got
Rod
got a tape or a cassette,
Yeah.
he would put it in,
Yeah.
he'd listen to the first 10
Right.
seconds,
Yeah.
and he'd take it out and throw it across the room. Rubbish!
That's hilarious. Yeah. Different approach.
So, you know, these days, one could argue that we're in a moment of disposability in culture. There's so much product, there's so much stuff, hundreds of thousands of songs being released daily, millions of songs being released a year, and there's a kind of disposability that's set in. In total contrast, all of these records that you all have worked on with Quincy are like the opposite of disposable to me. They're so meticulous, there's so much attention to detail, they're so consummate, and they sound like they were just done yesterday. Every single one of them has a vitality and a freshness to them that is so powerful. You know, we're here at a school where young people are trying to figure out how to make culture, to make work, to make music that is not going to be disposable. What's the secret of Quincy Jones' ability to make work that's so long-lasting, to find the exact right song, whether it's She's Out of My Life or whether it's Man in the Mirror, to find the right guitar sound, to find the right drum sound, to find the right keyboard sound, to find the right vocalist? How does he do it?
Okay, here's the thing.
He picks them.
Here's the fundamental issue. It's not just Quincy, it's the time, the whole period of time. The bad news for you lovely students out there is you can't duplicate that because it's not there anymore. All you can do is the best you can do right now. And, you know, there's a lot to look forward to, but it was a completely different time, Dean King. Problem was, not the problem, but the beauty is that we were incredibly blessed to be part of a perfect alchemy, a perfect storm that involved the best musicians playing the best music for the best artists in the best studios recorded by the best engineers. Okay? And we had all that, and wait a minute.
Hey, what's the key word? Best.
Best. And we did it every day. That's how we made a living. But guess what else? Guess what else? You talk about the disposability. It was one of the reasons why it wasn't disposable back then is because
you made the conscious effort to listen to the radio. And when you heard something you liked, you made the conscious effort to get in your car and drive to Tower Records. And after you were finished choosing what you liked, guess what else you did? You looked around in the other bins. And you looked in that genre's bins, and you looked in there, oh, let me see what's happening in the jazz. Oh, let me see what's happening in pop. Let me see what's happening in R&B. And you took the time to look. And then after you got everything out of the store, you drove back home, and what'd you do? You put on the record player. And you sat down, and you listened to it. Sometimes it had a little help. Other times, maybe not, but you took the time to listen. You talk about disposability. Everything you want to listen to is in this. Yeah. And guess what else? This is background stuff. You don't even take the time to listen to it anymore. You know, you be washing the clothes. You don't even know who did it. You don't know anything about the record. You know, you're making a sandwich and you just have it in the back. You just, you know, and you don't even pay attention anymore. Right?
You know what, Greg? A song like Man in the Mirror, and stop me if I'm wrong, but I do not think a song like that could be recorded today. No one would want to hear it. No one would want to listen to it.
Well, that's pretty sad.
It's not 16 bars. It has a bridge. It has background vocals. I mean, stuff that...
And a lyric?
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah.
What a concept.
Here's one thing we're forgetting that adding is writers. Now you're saying everything was the greatest, the
greatest writers, exactly.
But there's one other point, is like all the kids, we watch TikTok, right?
What was that sound?
That was
But the problem is everybody's trying to be self-servant.
Yeah.
Servient. And
everybody's like, dig me.
Well, but here's the deal. And what we all talked about is when we all got, first of all, Quincy is the greatest producer of all time. There's no question about it. Why was he? Because casting. But he would allow everybody to come together and play together. If we were to try to do this on our own, this is why we don't see a lot of damn solo records on this stage. You know, we're better off together. And that's how we had disc jockeys. We had, like Greg said, we hovered around records. I'm a record snob, and I still put them on. I still listen to you in the old days.
Watch that accusatory finger.
Well, you know what I mean by that. But I think the point is that we were at a time and place. Can we duplicate this again?
No.
I don't know, but you know, this is up to this generation to try.
You know, I don't know that I entirely agree with that, and I'll tell you why. A couple of reasons. Played on Thriller, #1 record in the world. 35 years later, I did it again. Played on Daft Punk's Random Access Memories, and was right on the record, #1 in 107 countries. 35 years later, you know, I'm senior citizen playing on this record. Yeah, it was geezer funk. Okay, leave me alone. Dean, you said it. You said attention to detail. One of the things that we teach, this is a shameless plug, by the way, in the popular music department is attention to detail. When we teach them music from the 60s and early 70s, when Patrice and Andy and Sean and myself are dogmatic about learning attention to detail. So when you come out, you won't be ordinary, you'll be extraordinary. I tell the students all the time, I'm not training you to get a job, I'm training you to take over. And a couple more things, attention to detail. When I was working on PYT, the guitars on PYT, it was Bruce, Quincy, and me in the studio. And Bruce had figured out a way to sync together. Back then you only had 24 tracks, there was no digital recording. It was tape about this wide, and you were limited to 22 tracks because one you needed for tone, and you couldn't put anything next to the tone. Bruce figured out a way to give everybody their own reel of tape. So I had 22 tracks, so I'm playing guitar parts. Quincy's like, what else you got? I said, well, let me try this. Well, what else you got? And I never ran out of tracks. And he's listening to every single thing. And so there was a breakdown where I doubled the bass with like an overdrive rock and roll sound. And he says, it's great. I said, okay, I'm done. He says, no, you're not. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you can't bring that sound in and leave it out in the vamp. You got to play that through double the bass through the entire thing, because he was listening to every single thing that I was doing, attention to detail. And the last thing is, I didn't come to preach to you tonight, but there's a scripture in the Bible that says God's no respecter of persons, which means he doesn't have favorites. So that means, like, if one person did it, there's a possibility of somebody else doing it. So I will never say there'll never be another Earth, Wind & Fire. There'll never be another Stevie Wonder. There'll never be another Smokey Robinson. There'll never be another you fill in the blanks, because I believe that that's possible. And I think the key is striving to be not just ordinary, but excellent and extraordinary. And I think when you do that, then you got possibilities.
And that's why he's here at USC. That's why. That's why he's here. That's why he's here. Give it up. That's why he's here. Fight on. Fight on. USC. USC right here. Respect it. Respecting.
Respect. Put some respect on his name. Okay, so I have to say something that almost got me killed in the 70s at a similar panel discussion. Somebody raised their hand and said, "Where do you think music is going?" I said, "It's going down the toilet." There was a groan. "Well, why would you say that?" I said, "Because you're taking music education out of the schools. You're going to have an audience of music illiterates. Everything in life, at 74, I figured this out, requires some kind of cultivation. If you eat a hamburger and you've never had a hamburger before, and it's just like a regular hamburger, and then you get to eat a hamburger with a different kind of meat in it, and you go, ooh, I had a hamburger, but I ain't never had a hamburger like this.
That's Kobe beef, baby.
See what I'm saying? It's about the Kobe. You got to get the Kobe in your ear. You know, you've got to hear that so that you can distinguish between the Kobe and McDonald's. And that's gone. You know, they've got 2 music teachers in the state of New York, in the state, and they teach 1 music appreciation class in each school a year. So no wonder I'm happy with a beat and some words, and that's it, and no bridge, and no verse, and what we used to call a fade on a record. Well, that's a whole song now. So you've got that issue. You've got the fact that it has become so competitive because you can find talent on your phone. A&R departments at record companies have people that sit all day and look on TikTok and see, look who's the next thing. So that creates a different kind of pressure, a different level of pressure to make music. Also, when we made music, and when you would purchase that music, it was a very tactile experience. You didn't just get that you went, like, that's a perfect description. You went to you had to get up off your ass if you wanted to really hear it a lot. And when you took it home, you didn't pick it up and put it on the track that you like. You started it from the beginning because you were about to see and hear a movie. You were going to hear side 1, side 2, and if you were really young, you would put those speakers, when they got stereo, on each side of your head. You know you did this. And you would have that album in front of you, and you would look at those liner notes, and you'd find out who sang what, and who played what, and who arranged what, and what studio it was at, and there were notes from the artist talking about, we had so much fun working on this project. None of that. When you listen to something now, you have no frickin' idea who's doing anything. That's a problem.
But there's 39 writers on it.
Oh, that's I love it.
39 writers.
To write a groove, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, including the guy who drove the car.
Yeah.
You know, he wrote the hook.
He wrote the hook, exactly.
Yeah.
He wrote the hook. And now we all sound like a bunch of old farts. And in our day,
That's right, you don't know, you kids don't know from music.
the music,
They don't know.
it was better then.
It was better then.
It was better.
They don't know from
They don't know.
Okay, I'm sorry, real quick. Quincy told, he wanted us to meet, because believe it or not, there was a time we did not know each other. So he would get Patty and tell her all this stuff about me. Oh, you gotta meet. Well, I'm gonna tell you this. He would call me Mouse, but don't even try it. He's the only one who can call me that. Don't even try it. So he would say to Patty, you gotta meet Mouse, you gotta meet Mouse. He's fantastic, you know. And he would go on and on and on. And then he'd come to me and say, you gotta meet Patty, you gotta meet Patty. You two are hysterical. It's gonna be great. When you meet, it's gonna be like fireworks. You gotta meet Patty. And he would go back and forth to us for months and months and months. And finally, one day, we were at his house, right? And he just couldn't wait. He's like, Patty, this is great, this is Patty. And we looked at each other and went, hi. But shortly after that, oh yeah.
All right, we should take some questions from the audience. I know you must have many. So we'd like to give you some time to do that. I don't know if there's there's a microphone here. So we'll want you to ask the question in the microphone. Now, I know some folks in the audience don't know the difference between a question and a statement. So let's please keep it to questions that the panel can answer. I would appreciate it. Okay.
Okay, wait, while you're waiting.
Oh, here we go.
He can't resist. He cannot resist.
While you're waiting.
Oh, she's ready.
All right, why don't you take it away?
And the category is.
Good evening. My name is Yasmina Sharif, and I'm a jazz voice major here at Thornton. And first, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to speak with us. My question is, I'm 19, and I was wondering if you had one thing you would tell your 19-year-old self, what that thing would be.
The 10-year-old?
19.
Oh, jeez.
You know what? I
Maybe
would
one
tell.
of the singers could answer.
I would tell myself in retrospect to develop your interpersonal skills and your life skills as well as your musical skills. I was the one that spent 10 hours a day playing the guitar and on weekends playing gigs. So suffice it to say, when Greg met me and most people met me, when Saida met me, I was crazy as hell.
You still are.
Later on, I
are.
started to get better life skills and things like that. So I think there's a balance, and the balance is work, but also, you know, after you shed it, go to the movies, you know, go call your friends, go do something, go out, work on your spiritual life, just things, there's a balance, but, you still got to shed and practice and be excellent, but make sure that you are able to get along with people, because if you can't get along with people, you can't work with them anyway.
I would add, at that age, we don't know anything about business.
Oh, yes.
So, you think you know everything. Man, you're hot stuff. But the thing is that you don't know anything about business. So I would just suggest learning the tactics of business.
And to piggyback on what Paul said, as Nadia Boulanger once told Quincy, and as Quincy has since told every one of us on this panel, you are no more of a musician than you are a human being.
Okay.
You know what else Madame Boulanger said to Quincy? Did I get the right? Did you say Madame Boulanger? Yeah. When he studied with her, she said, your music will not be less or more than who you are as a human being.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Think of that for a while.
There it is.
All right. Next question on our right. Your
There are
left.
two lines.
Gentlemen, you just answered My question. My question is, what was the single greatest thing that you learned from Quincy Jones, but you just answered it?
No, keep your publishing.
Speaking
Speaking of business, John.
Great to see everybody.
What's up, Matt?
Wonderful.
Matt, how you doing? Matt Forger, one of the great engineers that worked with us with Quincy. And Michael. Matt Forger right there.
Hey.
That's right.
I would like to say the most valuable lesson that Quincy Jones ever taught me as a songwriter, he told me that the best songwriters are rewriters. Let me repeat that. He said the best songwriters are rewriters. That means they're not happy with their first take on a lyric, their first take on the chorus, their first idea. They hone their ideas. They make every line the best they could be. And that's what I learned from Quincy Jones.
Very well, too.
Thank you.
very
All right.
much.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Go ahead, you're next.
Good evening. A special hello from South Africa to Patty Austin. Your friend, Onika Magwakwa, out of Unity Journalists of Color, sends her regards. To all of you.
You know Onika, come on now.
That's my mother. Yes,
That's
my
your
mother.
mom, you
That's
said.
my mother.
Okay. Oh, cool.
All of you have had to navigate a producer-artist relationship between a time that was not virtual and now where you are often looked to as the guides for newer artists. What would you advise for any producer or any artist, songwriter on the best tenets of the producer-artist relationship?
Did everybody hear that? What are the best tenets of a producer-artist relationship?
Tom, you answer that.
Yeah.
What's the best way to get, you say, the best result between an artist and a producer?
Let me rephrase. What are the cornerstone elements of a successful producer-artist relationship?
Truth.
Yes.
Tell the truth to each other. And talk about songwriting. Is rewriting that, I think it applies to being an artist too, is that everything we do, I think if we're really truthful with ourselves, we hear something and say, gosh, I wish I would have done that. Well, you didn't know then, but the thing is that what I learned from Quincy is keep listening, and when you feel a niche, let it, I wouldn't say fester, but let it grow. And it'll show you the way. But if you say, well, that song's done, well, I'm afraid you're kind of done too. But if you leave it open and say, hey, you know what? It's still cooking. It's still cooking. And when something comes up, and I learned this from Billy Joel too, is that a song won't let you alone until you sing it, look at it, and you don't get another idea. That's a song.
Thank you.
That's great. All right, who let that guy in? Wait. Security, we have a breach. We have a breach, security. We have a breach. Who let this, all right. This better be good.
All right. This question is for Saida.
What a surprise. What a shock.
Saida,
Telling
you
him?
shared with us the story about how you auditioned for Quincy, 800 people down to 4. And then you got presented with a recording contract, and it included a songwriting contract. But you had never written a song in your life. So can you tell us what your thinking was as you signed this songwriter deal? and how Quincy guided your songwriting?
Oh, did your husband just put you on blast?
He did.
Did he really just do that right there?
He gonna pay for that later, but anyway.
Eric, that's going to
It's
cost
gonna-
you later, I'm just telling you.
It's gonna be a long ride home, baby. Buckle up.
Saida, you got to
Now you made
explain.
me forget the damn question.
You got to explain, Saida. Who is this man?
I'm sorry?
Who's this man?
That is my husband of 10 years. 10 years, nobody's dead, nobody's in prison. Good thing. So, I'm sorry, what was the question? The question was,
since you never had written.
oh,
a song
yes,
with him.
okay. When Quincy offered this publishing deal, it was twofold. It was publishing and an artist deal, to be an artist in this group and to be a songwriter on his record label, his publishing company. So I took the contract and I said, I really want to be an artist, but I have never written a song. Quincy, I write poems. And so the other three guys took their contract to Quincy, and they told me he did something like all the contracts were on the desk, and he shuffled them around, and he said, where's Saida's contract? They said, oh, she doesn't want a songwriter contract. She just wants an artist's contract. He pushed all the contracts towards them and said, you either all get a deal or nobody gets a deal. Next thing I know, Saida, bitch, you better sign this contract. So when three large black men tell you to sign, you tend to sign. So I was doing everybody's demos because Quincy was recording Patty Austin, so everyone was sending songs into Patty. And I was at the auditions, and there were songwriters there who knew that Quincy would listen to me because I was one of the people he was considering to be in this group. So Quincy would get cassette after cassette after cassette with my demo on it. And he was like, who is this? That's Saida. And Tom, man, that's Saida. That's Saida. So that's another reason why I was in this group. One of the two people in the audience where I was auditioning for Quincy was Dennis Lambert and Franny Goldie. They wrote a song called Don't Look Any Further. Don't Look Any Further was supposed to be a duet between Shaka Khan and Dennis Edwards. They couldn't get the two together in the same place at the same time, and Motown was like, look, we gotta put this record out. Who's singing the demo? Some chick named Saida Garrett. Fine, put her on it. I went back I was so excited, I told Dennis Lambert, ooh, I get to record the song for real. He said, oh, no. We're keeping that demo vocal. What? That's why whenever you do a demo, don't ever say, it's just a demo. Because you don't know where that demo would end up.
Wear it out.
Okay, over here.
My name is Jenny Carr, and it's really fun you say that because I'm a session singer, and the first demo I ever sang was a song that you wrote with Randy Cantor.
Shut up!
Yeah, the very, very first demo session, and maybe with Gordon Chambers or something.
What was the song?
I think it was called like Break Free or something like that. And so I love you. I love all of you so much. This has been such an inspiring
And we love you back.
evening. And Patty, I toured with you in Germany.
Hey.
You called me Houndstooth. Anyway.
She called you what?
Houndstooth, because I had like a houndstooth scarf anyway.
Oh, houndstooth. You called her houndstooth.
Yeah, I mean, it's been
I
like
was
a
hoping
minute.
it had nothing to do with her dental work, though.
But that was... I didn't hear that. Anyway, it was one of the highlights of my career was like touring with Patty Austin. I mean, my vocals have been so inspired by you. So, but what my question is are there any like deep cuts like that haven't been released from back in the day, or anything coming out now, like anything Quincy did back then that we might be able to hear someday, that you recorded, all of you with him?
Not that I know of.
I mean, I think he was particularly efficient, wasn't he, as a producer? Wasn't he particularly efficient as a producer, and therefore there isn't
There
much
was no
left over?
waste. There
Yeah,
was no
there
extra.
was no waste.
Whatever you recorded came out. Yeah.
we've been through the A&M years, and there's nothing extra. Those all went on the records.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that we recorded that didn't get released at some point in time.
There's extras from the Thriller sessions that have come out, but they're definitely demos, you know.
Yeah. Just for those of you who do demos, I did demos for a while in my career. And the secret to doing demos, actually you're talking about do a great performance, but don't make it too great. Because you're usually doing it for another singer. And if you lay it all out, you get a little ticked off at your ass. It can go either way. Yeah, sometimes they want, yeah, exactly. They want,
Or they'll be mad.
or they'll be mad
match what you did.
right. So it's a fine line between love and hate.
That's a thin line.
Oh,
All right.
I changed it for the occasion. I changed it for the
I see.
occasion.
Okay, let's take a question right now.
The lyricist
Jump
would
in.
not let you
Come on,
do
Thornton,
that, Pat.
let's go.
Hi, thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Jared. I do record production engineering. So I had a question about, for those of you guys who've had to work with Quincy in the studio, how is he negotiating those kind of interpersonal dynamics between the musicians, engineers, everybody's in the room, getting the best performances out of everybody, making sure that everybody feels comfortable in these situations that could probably are pretty high stakes,
I want
pretty
that
high
question.
stress.
I always called Quincy, and you have to be as old as me and older to know what I'm talking about, the Pearl Mesta of producers. Pearl Mesta was a socialite in New York, I guess in the 30s, that used to give these marvelous, elaborate parties. And everybody there was like the greatest writer, the greatest director, the greatest guy that slept on the corner, on the sidewalk. She would mix all these people together, and they said if you went to a party that Pearl Mesta gave, somehow everybody gelled. Quincy has a sixth sense about making everybody gel, and you don't get in the room unless you are a badass. That's number one. So he doesn't have to sit there and guess, gee, I wonder how this is going to turn out. I wonder how those backgrounds are going to be. Because you got the guy, he's gone. What happened to Tom? Oh, okay. Well, sometimes you have the guy at the end of the, you know, everybody here is a badass. Everybody knows what they're doing. So that's one thing we don't have to worry about. One less thing to worry about. We all get along. Ish. Sometimes. No, but we get along. We get along musically, we get along socially, we get along, we love each other. And we love being together and making music together because everybody's a badass.
It's
you know,
fun.
it's
It's fun.
like the Knicks. It's like the
See, 'cause
like
people-
the Lakers when the you know when the team we're a team and everybody on this team is
Game 7 Lakers.
everybody on this team is a star. And nobody has a problem when somebody in this group emerges more than somebody else because it's just, that's your moment to do that.
Right,
I'll have
right.
mine, Greg will have his, JR will have, Saeed will have hers. We're all rooting for each other all the time. And when we're in the studio with Quincy, we're just trying to make each other really happy with what we hear when we go and listen to that playback.
We're busy trying to impress each other and Quincy
Yeah.
Jones.
Yeah.
So we're all at our highest peak. We're all trying to do the best work we could do because we want to impress Quincy and all these other badass musicians in the group.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the weakest link.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what the foundation of all this is? Love.
Oh, yeah.
That's the foundation of. See, you know, Quincy always operated. No, check. Quincy always operated out of love. People that operate out of intimidation run away from. I never understood that. I never understood how someone doing music and assembling a group of musicians together could operate out of trying to scare them, out of trying to, because what you're doing is you're trying to, as a musician, you want to bring joy to the people who are, so how can you do that if you're scared? That doesn't even make sense to me. So his foundation of everything was love. That's why you come in and you knew when you were doing a Quincy session, these three things were gonna happen. Laughs, food, and eventually some great music. But it was all based out of love, and we just enjoyed it. It wasn't scientific, it wasn't anything that deep. It was just so natural, and it's just what everyone else said, you know. But the foundation of it was love.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
I just want to also let you know we're not going to be able to get to every question, unfortunately. So these will be the last two over here and then over here.
No,
Sorry.
we'll be here all week. Come back. We try to feel. We're gonna be here all week. It's great. See, Dean King didn't tell you that he's got us. We have bunks. We have bunks in.
We are not going to be here all week.
We have bunks.
Hey, and a bus is outside.
We got a bus.
We're going on the
Are you
road.
bringing in food or something?
Yeah, we're gonna
feed us all.
Yeah. Okay, no, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Honeycutt. I'm a singer. First of all, I just want to say it is a joy to be in the same room with my life's liner notes. It's just amazing to see you in the flesh. I just love it. I've always marveled at the production of a Quincy Jones produced album, the arrangements. And I wonder about the process. Like, were these things, I guess it probably varied from song to song, were they already arranged, like charts and everything? Or was it more experimental in the studio, whether it be vocal arrangements, horn arrangements, string arrangements, whatever? Was it experimental or was it already set?
It was a bit of both, but it was usually charts.
Charts.
And we'd have demos, and we'd have charts written out based on those demos. But part of the magic of Quincy, and he would always say this, you want to leave a little room for God to walk in the room.
Yeah.
You know, for the inspiration to walk in. You know, you don't want to have everything so perfectly crossed out that you miss what's special about it. You miss the essence of the song or the music, you know.
Right. And if I may add to that, I remember when we were doing Back on the Block, yes, we would come in with arrangements, but Quincy would sort of guide and shape, and he'd say, oh, what if you did something like this in this section? And we would come up with something on the spot that was not part of the original arrangement. And there was a guy in the back, I believe it's O'Brien Crawford, who was transcribing everything that we were doing in real time. And I saw him, when I say we, I saw him do that with other musicians as well. He was back there transcribing everything so that whatever Quincy ultimately chose as the final, it had already been transcribed and written out, and they could kind of piece that together.
By hand.
By hand,
Yeah.
yes.
You know what? You bring up something that's interesting to me because we did quite often. I was usually doing vocal arrangements, and Jerry did the brass, you know, and the rhythm. You got 3 or 4 guys in there, and you guys were kind of arranging it as you did it because basically you were there because who you are and the way you play. So, but there was a time when we did the Wiz, and A&M wanted Quincy to do a disco album on the Wiz. And I think after he finished throwing up, he said, Nad, would you help me with this? And I said, actually, I kind of dug disco. So I said, yeah, cool, man. And he said, I have an idea. We picked a song. And he said, just for the fun of it, I want you to write out every part, everything you want from the guitar, from the bass, from the piano, everything. Write it, everything out. So I did, and I can't remember who was in there, but it was probably you guys. And we get in there and play it, and it sounds good, but there's no heart. Right. And then he said, okay. And he said, while you're at it, just man out a chord chart, and with the same guys, and we played the same song, and all of a sudden it came alive. Yeah. So I think there is a wonderful balance of being prepared and also trusting who we are and do what we are.
Tom, I got to say something. I have done, you know, I sing a lot of the stuff that I did with Quincy, and there'll be an arrangement there, and you'll have musicians that decide they want to like do their own thing on the arrangement, or maybe leave some notes out. Once that gets locked down, you don't want to mess with it. Because Quincy's a weaver. He's always making a tapestry when he makes music. And a guitar lick can run through the whole song, real simple guitar lick, and you get a really anxious or happy or aggressive guitar player, and he wants to add his own thing to the thing that took, an hour to create. Don't do that. Because you pull that piece out and the whole thing just goes boom. And it's like the simplest little, it goes through the whole song. It's like, yeah, but I'm playing now, so I need to go no, you don't. Because that will make everything else fall apart. And he's brilliant at knowing what stays and what goes. And if you try to do it any other way, it will stop you. It will stop you. It's just like, no, there's something wrong. That's not the way that's.
That's why those records are timeless.
Hey, Patty, so we're doing the Dude. We are doing the Dude. And it's day one, and we're all set up, and we're, getting sounds with Bruce, and everything's cool. Everybody, all right, go home. It's 5:30, 6 o'clock. We all feel good. Coming from the drummer's perspective, I've got my whole set up. Bruce has got it all mic'd up. We go home. The next day, I come in, and I believe it was Steve Lukather, and he's laughing. And goes, JR, look at your drums. Talk about the genius of Quincy Jones. And I go, where are my drums? I look over, the drums are all gone. All there is a kick drum and a snare drum and a hi-hat. And all my other drums are gone. And I'm thinking, where are my drums, man? How wrong? And Bruce Sweeting comes out and he looks at me and he goes, Quincy doesn't want any fills on this record. And it was the Dude. So how many Grammys later? And I just go, yes, sir. So again, he knew about what he envisioned.
One more thing on that, on this arrangement.
You're never going to get your questions answered, right? You know that, right?
I forgot the punchline, which is why I told that story about writing everything. Write it and then give it to the guys, and they killed it. And Quincy looked at me and he said, see, we gotta leave a little room for God. I love that.
All right.
All right. So I want to introduce myself. My name is Sam Williams. I'm a rock and roll music historian. I might be a millennial, but trust me, I have an old man musical taste. I was raised on the great music of the late 50s, 60s, early 70s. I do a podcast about educating and preserving 60s music rock and roll history called The Millennial Throwback Machine. My question I have for you guys is that you guys all work with Quincy. One of the artists that Quincy worked with that is kind of an overlooked part of his career, but it's very important because she was the very first pop artist for the teen audience that Quincy have worked with. I'm talking about the one and only Leslie Gore, Quincy recorded Leslie at A&R Recording Studios on 48th Street, New York City with Philharmonic Engineering, Klaus Okerman arranging. Did Quincy ever talk with you guys about that period of working with those New York studio musicians, New York, and working with Leslie Gore? Because this is kind of important because this is the very first pop artist that he ever worked with for the teenage market.
Ed's got it.
He had a story that he told me that he liked to repeat, which was when he was an A&R man with Mercury, one of the artists that he had to cover was Charles Aznavour, was at Carnegie Hall doing a gig. So Quincy had gone to the gig to go backstage and schmooze and do all the stuff, and he had just finished recording It's My Party.
Yeah.
He said, and after the gig, he's standing in front of Carnegie Hall talking to someone, and a Rolls Royce pulls up in front of the place, and Phil Spector gets out of the car. And Quincy sees, hey, Philzy, how you doing, man? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, Q, I just cut this great song on the Ronettes. It's My Party. And Quincy went, oh, really? Yeah, cool. And he talked to the guy that he was with. He said, we're putting Leslie's out tomorrow. And literally, they went back to the office, had it pressed up, and it was in the street 2 days later.
Because the musicians that Quincy worked with in New York on those Leslie Gore records, you guys came up at a time where everyone got credit on those 80s albums, but back then it was the 45s and 60s. Yeah. No one was getting credit back then, and it was all the great New York jazz musicians that Quincy worked with. I'm talking like Bucky Pizzarelli, Al Caiola, George Barnes, George Vivier, Milt Hinton, Don Lemon, Ed Shaughnessy, all those
Grady
guys.
Tate.
You know, and it's just really it's really astonishing that he worked with the teenage audience that early on. So.
Thank you for your question. It's a great point.
Yep.
We really appreciate it. You all, I am super sorry. We are super sorry to disappoint, but I have to be sensitive to the venue because we got to get out of here pretty soon.
Let's take it to the street.
Take it to the street. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, including you, Greg, but I don't know if you want to, since you already got up to the piano, do you want to play us out with something?
Play us out.
Anything?
My Three Sons.
Thank you for the
Gilligan's
support.
Island. Play Gilligan's Island. You know that one.
Either one. I don't care.
All right. You ready? Just show off. Either one.
Okay, watch this. Name that tune.
Gonna make a change for once in my life. Yeah, it's gonna feel real good. Gonna make a difference. Gonna make it right. As I turn up the collar on my favorite winter coat, this wind is blowing my mind. I see the kids in the street, not enough to eat. Who am I to be blind, pretending not to see their needs? A son's disregard, a broken bottle top, and a one-man show. They follow each other on the wind, 'cause they got nowhere to go. That's the way I want you to know. I'm starting with the man in the mirror, and I'm asking him to change his ways. And no massage gonna be on any clipper. If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. Been a victim of a selfish kind of love. It's time that I realize, yeah, there was some with no home, not a nickel alone. Could it be really me, pretending that they're not all alone? Oh, well, oh, deeply scarred, somebody's broken heart, and a one-man dream. They follow the pattern of the wind you see, 'cause they got nowhere to be. That's why I'm starting with me. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his way. Let me hear you.
You wanna make a better place. Watch out, make a change, you gotta get it right.
Why you gotta touch? You can't close your mind. That man
Saida Garrett, Greg Phillinganes.
You guys have been great. Come back, we're here all week. No, we're not. No, we're not. No. Yes, I love the background. You guys are amazing. Since you weren't singing, so.
Paul Jackson Jr., J.R. Robinson, Greg Phillinganes, Patty Austin, Saida Garrett, Mervyn Warren, Jerry Hay, Ed Eckstein, Harry Weinger, and Quincy Jones.
And Jason King.
Thank you all. Let's take a picture.